I always say, don't think about where you are now. Think about how far you've come, and that journey, that bit from here to here, that's how brilliant you are. And so every exam you take, every piece of homework that you set in, every good friendship that you have, every day that it's really difficult to get what you do done, but you did it, really reflect on that and go, so I had to deal with these things in order to get to that. And then you go, oh God, that's pretty special. I'm Patrick McCann, and I work for Linklaters, and we are a big global law firm that does sort of big corporate work across the gamut of acquiring, merging, running, fusing together, through to restructuring, insolvency, litigation, that sort of stuff. And we are in lots of countries, and most of those big corporates, the signs of which you see when you're traveling on a bus from one place to another, we've probably worked for. A lot of those, lots of the products in your house will be made by clients that we have.
Amazing. And tell us a little bit about your role. Like, what do you do at that organization?
So I'm the director of learning, which means I'm responsible with my team. I've got about 30 or 40 people in my team, and we look after all of the skills and learning development for people. So that is from the booking of the rooms and the sending out of the invitations and the creation of the materials to the actual delivery of it. So, the equivalent of your school teachers, we've got a bunch of those, or we work with those. And then it's also about coaching, which is sort of one-to-one support and mentoring programs. And then we do a fair amount of outreach into the community, and also amongst other law firms as well. I chair the training committee for the City of London Law Society, and part of that is sort of trying to make sure that we have the best learning available to lawyers and their colleagues working in the city. And we liaise with people like the Law Society and the Solicitors Regulatory Authority and the Legal Services Board on big structural changes in the way that we handle things. So those are my big bits. I also sit on the HR leadership team, so that's the team that looks after all of the sort of the hiring in, the looking after, the pay of, and the exiting as and when people leave of our people. So I look after that as well. I also, with two others, look after the knowledge and learning team globally. That's about 150 people, but I look after the learning bit mainly.
So a lot of different things going on. But I know about you as well that you're particularly passionate about supporting underrepresented groups, and even in a very senior role in a big law firm, you're finding the time to do extra things outside of that to sort of support young people from underrepresented backgrounds. So tell us a little bit about your passions as well, and a little bit about you as a person.
Sure. So look, I think what I've come to realize over the past few years is that I get very aggrieved by imbalance. I sort of think everybody should have the same chances in life, and I get aggrieved when that is not made to be the case, and I get even more aggrieved when those who have those privileges and for whom things are given or things are easier don't really acknowledge that. So I sort of have a personal drive, I suppose, to try and make that easier for some people. So my background is that I grew up in the 1970s. I had a German mum and a British dad, and he was in the army, and we lived in Germany on army camps. And that was quite difficult because my parents were lovely and I had a really lovely childhood, but I was a German kid living on a British camp in what essentially was a country that we had beaten in a world war. So it's quite tense. And I did get some unwelcome attention from some school friends who felt that, maybe I was the enemy and what have you. But I was also a very, very queer seeming kid as well. So someone described me as effeminate, I think, which is not my favourite word, but I think what they meant was, I wasn't like my brother, sort of a rugby playing heterotype, and that sort of difference was recognised, I think, as a vulnerability, and to some degree it was exploited. Now, I never had a problem with who I was, with having a German mum or being gay, but other people did, and they used that to sort of to suppress me a bit, I suppose I would say. So I wasn't in my childhood really able to be myself. Not that I necessarily projected a different image, because I was always very identifiably queer, and obviously I spoke German, so I couldn't pretend not to be German either. But what I was really keen to do, what I really noticed, I think, was that that meant that I couldn't really be myself, and because I couldn't be myself, I couldn't be as good as I could be. And I noticed that when, for example, I went to university. I jumped a year at school for various reasons. So I went to school as I remember when I went to secondary school, I was 10 and I was quite small, and I was at a school of 1,000. And I think I was the smallest boy in the school. And also it was like a boarding school, because my parents were in Germany where my dad was working. But we had to move every 20 months, which meant it was difficult to get good schooling, because they could just rip you out before an exam. You'd be living in a different country. So I went to a boarding school the army paid for. Not a great school, but it was fine. It turned into comprehensive the year I went, but I was the smallest kid, and my brother was the rugby captain and all of that, and I was this small little gay kid, and it was just it was just interesting, and it meant that in my life I couldn't really express myself, and I had teachers that would ridicule me a bit. All of my friends were either girls or they were boys that turned out to be gay later. So it just made it for a different experience. And when I went up to university at 17, I was again quite small, I think, and it was quite scary for me. And everybody that I met, because it was good but fairly normal, comprehensive, and not everybody went to university, and not everybody was guaranteed that future. So when I went up, and I went to King's College in London, which was a school that was full of public school kids, and they had this sort of innate reassurance about who they were and confidence that they could achieve whatever they wanted to achieve, whereas I was racked with doubt, I think, because I just thought, I'm in the wrong place. I shouldn't really be here. I'm not as clever as these kids. And it wasn't that I wasn't as clever as the kids. It was just that I wasn't as confident as the kids. And I think that had to do a bit with my background. And I was the first one to university in my school, so in my family. So I didn't have someone to say, oh, all the kids are like that, and you will be great. I just didn't have that. So, and then I was gay as well. So I had to that was not the time to be out and gay in the mid 80s. So what that meant was that it wasn't until I came out in my third year, and then fourth year, that my grades, which had been fairly average, because I became really confident, and I believed in who I was, and that I had a right to be in the world, and that I could do as well as everybody else. My grades just shot up, just went really high. It wasn't top of the year, and I wasn't near the top, but I was in the top third from having been in the bottom third. And it was like there's a percentage difference. It was 10, 15, 20% difference. My grades went up. And that had to do with owning who I was and recognizing that I had as much right as everybody else. And it was only really in A, coming out, but also B, talking to some of the other kids and realizing what their life was like, that I was like, oh, okay, so you didn't have to deal with being in a class of 27 people for your A-level, for example, or your A-level teacher themselves only got a C in their own A-level. So, how good could that teaching be? So I was having to deal with that, whereas they were being taught in groups of 3 or 4 in lovely tutorials by people who had graduated from Oxford and Cambridge, who'd probably been fellows there. And so they had a lot more given to them in that respect.
It was only when you sort of started speaking to them and realizing that they weren't better than you, it sounds like, or that they weren't innately more intelligent, that you were just as good as them, that you were able, it sounds like that's when you were able to kind of say, you know what, I can do this, and I am as good, if not better, than some of those people. And I suppose just the question off the back of that is, if you were talking to someone who maybe feels the way right now that you felt back then, in terms of feeling doubt, or feeling out of place, or not having role models, if someone's in that situation right now, like, you're sort of talking a little bit about the things you did to help overcome that, like, what would you say to that person right now?
So, like, Charlie, what I'm really bigly into is I think society is not set up to help you recognize what you have achieved and to gain confidence from that and go, okay, I'm good at this. I think society is sort of set up in this country for most people to go, you didn't get the top grade, or if you got the top grade, so what? And if you only look at the grade you got, but you didn't look at the journey that you had to come on to get to there. So, what were your school teachers like? How many people were in your class? What was the library like? What was the resource that you had? How good was the teaching? What was your home life like? How much time could you dedicate and focus could you dedicate to your studies, etc.? Were you worrying about whether your family were all right, or whether there was enough food, or were you worried about whether you were safe in the school? Were you even taught that you could achieve all this stuff? If those are the things that you have to overcome, then I always say, don't think about where you are now. Think about how far you've come, and that journey, that bit from here to here, that's how brilliant you are. And so every exam you take, every piece of homework that you set in, every good friendship that you have, every day that it's really difficult to get what you do done, but you did it, really reflect on that and go, so I had to deal with these things in order to get to that. And then you go, oh God, that's pretty special. So look, if I think of me, and I'm not particularly brilliant, but I went to university at 17. It was quite scary. I hadn't filled in a form, and my hall of residence didn't know that I was coming, so I didn't have a room. So they put me in a box room, and they said to me, we don't know if we're going to have a room for you tomorrow. So I had thought maybe that's the end of my university career, but I did get the room, but I could have gone home and I could have finished. It's the journey, it's the things that you have to navigate, the hurdles that you have to overcome, that I think makes you special. And if you don't have a load of hurdles, that means that you've got slightly less evidence that you have a load of qualities and skills that can get you a good result.
Yeah, so it's the almost the hurdles that people might face or might be feeling, or the doubt or the worries, can be transformed into a form of strength, because by overcoming them, you're talking about resilience, but also proving to yourself like you are worthy, you have done a lot, and you have overcome a lot, and you're still making progress. Is that what you're sort of saying?
I think it's actually more than that. I think you've made more progress. I think you've done more. If you're walking to school and you're not being driven to school, or you're not in a boarding school, you've already had to do something to get to the school. So I think you actually do more. And I think the other thing I would say, Charlie, is a lot of the system, as I call it, is set up to recognize where you are now, not that journey. That is really changing, and a lot of employers are really looking at that journey, which I think is great. Just remember that journey, and I think it makes you more adept, more skillful, if you've had to overcome a load of hurdles.
Yeah, 100%. Now, obviously, I know that you're, a huge LGBTQ plus advocate in the professional world, and you're very vocal on social media and other places about creating inclusive environments. I wonder if you have any kind of particular advice for young people who are part of the LGBTQ plus community, who are looking at the corporate world and thinking, oh, it doesn't, I haven't seen that many Patricks out there, like, or at least that I know of. How can they be thinking about navigating their future of work?
Probably good that there aren't too many Patricks out there, because I'm a lot. We don't want too many of me. I'm not sure the world can cope. So what I would say to LGBT youth is, first of all, welcome. And you are part of a family, and there are older people like me that will look after you, and we've tried to forge the path to make it easier for you. The second thing I would say is think about the seat that you want to sit on, the desk that you want to be at, the office that you want to work in, and the firm that you want to pay your salary. Where is that? Put no limits on that. Go, that is the job that I want. Point to it. Identify it. It might be 10 different organizations. It might be this sort of job. It might be this sort of location. And say, I am going to go and get that job. Because someone has to have that job. It might as well be you. In fact, it should be you. Why shouldn't it? And then try and work out what you need to do to get rid of all doubt. Just go, that's where I'm going to go. Same way that you'd say, I'm going to go to the corner shop. You're just going to go and get that job. Might be difficult, but you're going to go and get that job. Then I think network quite well. Try and see people that have done it, contact them, work out what they've done to get there. And, I would say, I think all of these jobs are doable. Winning a gold medal in Olympic gymnastics, quite tricky. Lots of dedication, lots of work. Becoming a partner in a law firm, becoming a director in a corporate, achievable, all achievable. Some talent, some hard work, some networking, a bit of luck, and a lot of persistence will get you there. And a number of people that find this easier are already well networked. They look like other people, their family know people, they've gone to the same sort of schools. So that's great. You have to build up your own network, and you have to find those opportunities and approach people and be not annoying, but be persistent and know where you are. And I hear this time and again from people that don't feel that they deserve that next job or that future for themselves. And as far as I'm aware, we're only on this planet once. Others might disagree with me. And your job is to make that the best experience that you possibly can for you and those around you. So if that's the job you want, point at it, say you're going to get it, and then do the things that you need to do to get there. Yeah. And the other thing I would say is the system is made sort of to make it look like it's really difficult. And it's not easy necessarily, but it is doable. So, have that. And I've been really interested to see, people go, I want that job, what can I do? And I love those sort of and I think those people will be really successful.
Yeah. So the message is basically, it doesn't matter which community you're part of, which background you're from, if you're from an underrepresented background or someone who's got role models, if you can get over that kind of doubt that you might have and point to the job that you want to achieve, then it's very doable if you kind of do the things that you've talked about.
Yeah, I would argue if you have that doubt, that to me is a plus. That's about self-awareness. That is about coming from a community. That is about bringing a different voice. That is about overcoming hurdles. That is about having to navigate a not straightforward journey. I think that makes you really special. I think that means you develop a whole bunch of skills. If someone gives you something, so what? Your only skill is in receiving it. If you have had to go out there and get it for yourself, then that means a lot more skills. And I feel this particularly with members of the queer community. We have learned skills like self-awareness, resilience, bravery in speaking to people about that. I think I'd like to feel most LGBT people are deep empaths, so they understand other people. I think we've had to be creative quite often to make careers happen for ourselves. I think we've had to solve problems. I think we've had to come up with alternatives, and I think we quite often had to go plan to get to where we need to get to. And I find all of that, there's strength in the adversity or the difference that you have, and the world is full of loads of different people, and just because you're different, I think it makes you special. Is all I would say.